Hello and welcome to this supplementary class on agriculture. In this recorded session, we are going to discuss a few topics that were left over from the previous class. So we are going to discuss 5 topics here. One is supply chain management, one is food processing industries, one is agricultural exports, integrated farming system, and the idea of taxing agricultural income, whether we should tax it or not. Now, firstly, let us start with supply chain management. अब हमने सप्लाई चेन मैनेजमेंट में क्या पढ़ा है ऑलरेडी वी ऑलरेडी नो दैट देयर इज एन एग्रीकल्चरल सप्लाई चेन तो इफ यू लुक एट इट एग्रीकल्चरल की प्रोडक्शन होती है फर्स्टली एट द फार्म लेवल देयर आर 3 थिंग्स देयर इज इनपुट देयर इज प्रोडक्शन पैटर्न्स एंड देयर आर पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन थिंग्स लाइक पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट लॉसेज एक्सेट्रा देन फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन whatever is produced needs to be stored, needs to be transported, there need to be logistics. Then it can go to processing. For example, if apples are produced, jam can be created here. And ultimately, we have to do marketing of it and sell to the consumer. So if you look at the supply chain, there is the farmer here and the consumer here, right? Up. Now, what is the problem here? The problem is that all of these things, in this entire chain, all of these particular steps are actually working in silos. Processing अलग से हो रही है, marketing अलग हो रही है, स्टोरेज ट्रांसपोर्ट अलग हो रहा है और प्रोडक्शन अलग हो रहा है बट इफ यू लुक एट इट what we need is coordinated information throughout this entire supply chain. Let's say there is something that the consumers want. If consumers, let's say, want that apples, whatever are being produced, need to be having more quality, or that the taste is not good, right? Or let's say that they detect that there are too many pesticides in it. Now this thing needs to be communicated to the farmer here. So this entire supply chain needs to be managed. The problem here is that since these things operate in silos, production happens, the farmer will give it to the mandi, then that will do storage, transport and logistics, we probably give it to the food processor will do processing, and then it will happen, and then marketing will happen. There is no coordinated management of these things. Because there is no coordinated management, because information sharing is not happening, because data and partnerships are not made across this supply chain, there is a problem of supply chain management. This is the main issue. In this topic, there have been 2 previous year questions, and what we have to read here is firstly, what is the concept of upstream and downstream, what is the current status of the challenges in India, and how supermarkets can solve this problem. Right, so let's just take a look at the previous year questions that have been asked on supply chain management and food processing. So if you look at supply chain management questions, you look at this role of supermarkets in supply chain management of fruits, vegetables and food items. How do they eliminate the number of intermediaries? This is the main question that has been asked on supply chain management, and according to this question, we have to look at how we solve this problem. Now, in supply chain management, firstly, we have to understand what are the components of supply chain management, right? So the components are fairly clear to us. If we look at the components, they start from the production phase where you source or you procure what you have to supply to the consumer. Then you have to do logistics management. In logistics management, there will be storage, transport, etc. Then you have to do organizational management. For example, if let's say Lay's wants particular potatoes, they have to do a contract with certain farmers, right? So if Lay's, let's say, wants potatoes for their chips, they have to do a contract with these farmers. So these alliances, these partnerships come here, and ultimately there is consumer response. So we have to efficiently deal with the idea of consumer response. Whatever the consumer says, let's say they say that the potatoes are not good enough, the chips are not crispy enough, all of this has to be, then this information has to go across this supply chain. This is the idea of supply chain management. Okay, so if you look at the components at every stage, right now there are broken links. So in India currently there are broken links, and at every stage there are certain issues. Now एक जो कोई क्वेश्चन आता है एग्रीकल्चर में, उसमें कभी कभी यू विल सी दिस टर्म challenges of upstream and downstream management. So let's understand this concept and understand the changes or the problems at every stage. For example, if we look at, let's say, food processing, we can imagine agriculture as a river, as a stream. So here is the farm, then here is the APMC, or let's say whoever is creating the storage infrastructure. Then here is the food processor, and here is the market. Okay, now let's say they ask what are the challenges of upstream and downstream in terms of food processing. So it depends on the point of view and what point we look at. So अगर food processing के upstream या downstream पूछा जा रहा है, तो upstream of food processing is production at the farm and storage and logistics at the APMC. Downstream of food processing is marketing, right? Similarly, if they ask constraints in upstream and downstream marketing, so let's say they're asking in terms of APMC, what are the constraints of APMC in terms of upstream and downstream challenges? तो अपस्ट्रीम चैलेंजेस वो होंगे जो चैलेंजेस हमें फार्म पे आ रहे हैं, एंड डाउनस्ट्रीम चैलेंजेस वो होंगे जो हमें फूड प्रोसेसिंग या मार्केटिंग में आ रहे हैं, राइट? सो इफ वी लुक एट फूड प्रोसेसिंग, upstream things will be things that happen before food processing, upstream. So these things are, for example, farm production and storage, transport and logistics at APMC. Downstream, it is marketing. Okay, then if we look at these four components, what are the challenges that are being faced in agricultural supply chain at every component? The first component is production. अब production में हम already पढ़ चुके हैं that the challenges will be in terms of inputs. So if you look at production, there is lack of quality inputs. There is a challenge with regards to extension services, right? It is not demand linked production, right? जैसे हमने देखा है that rice wheat system वो चलता रहेगा, राइट, बट डिमांड लिंक्ड प्रोडक्शन नहीं होगी. देन पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट नहीं है, एंड मेजर प्रॉब्लम ऑफ दिस डिमांड लिंक्ड प्रोडक्शन इज बिकॉज देर इज नो शेयरिंग ऑफ डेटा अक्रॉस द सप्लाई चेन. तो डिमांड लिंक्ड प्रोडक्शन नहीं है. पीपल वांट टू ईट मिलेट्स और लेट्स से दे वांट टू ईट फ्रूट्स, बट वी आर प्रोड्यूसिंग सीरियल्स. दिस इज द प्रोडक्शन चैलेंज. देन फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन द नेक्स्ट स्टेप इज द नेक्स्ट सप्लाई चेन स्टेप, which is basically storage, transport and logistics. So here if you look at it again, अगर हमें challenges यहाँ पर देखने हैं, the idea is the same. Storage facilities are not proper. There is a lack of cold chain facilities. Then wastage is very high. Then there is also a problem of multiple intermediaries here. And I will just show this to you. There is a problem of multiple intermediaries here. Again, there is lack of sharing of information across the supply chain. वो problem तो है ही. Then cold chain is missing, we have seen. And then even hygiene at this step. Storage, where the storage is happening and what sort of hygiene steps are there. This is a problem. इसके आगे हम आते हैं food processing पे. तो processing पे भी challenge है. That there is lack of quality. Processing quality is low. Low processing is doing. We are stuck at the low end of the value chain. अभी हम food processing देखेंगे तो हमें समझ आएगा. Right, and lastly if we look at marketing mein there is poor infrastructure, there is no transparency in terms of prices, there is no grading of produce, that this is good quality produce, this is medium quality and low quality, ये grading नहीं हो रही है, and there are long delays from the product to get from the producer to the ultimate retailer. Okay, इसमें अब एक overarching problem across this entire supply chain is that these are operating in silos and there is no communication with regards to what needs to be done in a coordinated manner. Now the solution to this problem is coordinated supply chain management, that we need to have coordination across this chain. For example, यहीं पे बताता हूँ. Let's say there is a company here, again जैसे Lay's का example मैंने लिया था. Lay's first does a market survey and understands that this is the sort of production I need to do. Then for Lay's to get that sort of potatoes, it will have to do a contract with people who are producing. Lay's itself will then collect all of this potatoes that are produced from the farmers. यहाँ पर जब वो contract करेंगे तो वो farmers को they will not only give information to the farmers, they will also give quality inputs such as seeds. They will give extension services. They will give help. So Lay's will tell the farmers that okay, I need this particular quality of potato. I am giving you information, I am giving you inputs, I am giving you extension services, I am giving you help. and from here, now please do production as per the demand that I have raised. Now once that demand has come and Lay's has understood that okay, I have received the sort of potatoes, then Lay's will itself do the storage, transport and logistics of it. Lay's will create the supply chain where Lay's will do cold chain storage. They will avoid wastage and they are the only intermediary, right? There will be no lack of sharing of information because they themselves know what sort of potatoes they require. Then here they will themselves go for then processing, right? And after processing, whatever they do in terms of, let's say, turning the potato into the chip, once that step is done, then they will go for marketing, and that also they are doing themselves. So there are no multiple intermediaries and they are responsible for the entire supply chain. So market intelligence with regards to what the consumer wants and what is required at the ultimate step, what is the focus on quality, what sort of safety measures need to be taken. For example, they will tell the farmers that we do not want pesticides beyond this particular number, and please do not use any, let's say, we only want you to use organic fertilizers, things like this, organic manure, no chemical fertilizers needs to be used. So Lay's gets to manage this entire chain, and to the farmer they give specific instructions, they give help. Then they make a collection center where they do supply management, storage, transport, logistics themselves. Then they do processing, and then they do marketing on their own. So the entire chain is coordinated and it's not working in multiple silos without any integration. Okay, so this is the idea of coordinated supply chain management. Now अगर हम coordinated supply chain management देखें, what are the advantages of coordinated supply chain management? The advantages are that if it is done in such a way where information is shared, where technology is shared, where finance is shared, where logistics are done in a coordinated manner, it will create a lot of benefits. So let's look at the benefits that it will get us, right? Firstly, for the farmer, if you look at it, the farmer is going to have structured relationships, and the farmer is also going to have traceability, that okay, I have produced 100 kg of potatoes. Okay, now where are they in the supply chain? Did they get wasted? How many of it was processed? What is the sort of ultimate product that came out of it? And since there is going to be less wastage here, there is going to be better processing here, there is going to be demand linked production here, the farmer is also going to get more price realization. Then of course, if you look at it, efficiency will be better because everyone is working in a coordinated manner. There is going to be better quality control also. Now if one agency is responsible for this entire, let's say, supply chain, there are going to be production of better infrastructure. They are themselves going to make better infrastructure, right? The facilities that they are going to make are going to be better. Then for the farmer, earlier what was the problem for the farmer? That he has to go through the APMC and there are multiple intermediaries, but here the farmer is getting directly to market, to the one agency that controls the entire supply chain. So here the farmer is going to get better market access. Right? And even if you look at the new Model APMC Act, APMCs, like I told you, they are things that the states determine, but Model APMC Act was created by the Niti Aayog, and as per the Model APMC Act, the Niti Aayog has put a specific chapter on contract farming. So if this contractual relationships are there, farmer also gets better legal protection. This is the idea of coordinated supply chain management. So let's look at our notes now. We've studied what is supply chain management. Please read these notes once, right? उससे आपको थोड़ा idea हो जाएगा. But I've already taught you what we had to study. What are the various links of the supply chain in India? And the fact is that everywhere there are certain issues. Now this is coming directly from the website of Manage. जब हमने extension services पढ़ा था, I told you how Manage is the apex institute in terms of agricultural extension services, is directly from their website. Then the advantages of coordinated supply chain management. अब यहाँ पर एक ये चीज़ मेरे को आपको ज़रूर बतानी थी. अगर हमने अभी देखा that let's say there is a supermarket, तो आपने शायद नाम भी सुना हो, there is a supermarket called Safal. इसकी केस स्टडी दी हुई थी इसी डॉक्यूमेंट में, and this is a wonderful way to answer the question also. There is a supermarket called Safal. So what is Safal doing? Safal has, let's say, this system where they tell farmers what they want, they directly recruit from the farmers. They have a collection center. In this collection center, they create cold chain, they do grading of produce, they do testing of produce in terms of pesticides, in terms of fertilizers. They have logistics management here. So storage, transport, logistics, all things are done here. Testing and grading is also done here. And directly then they give to the retailer, and the retailer gives to the consumer. Whatever feedback they get from the consumer here, it goes back to the collection center and it can go back to the farmer. So this is the coordinated supply chain management supermarket route, where everything is controlled by the supermarket and there are lack of intermediaries. So the chain is very clear. In case of the mandi or the APMC route, the farmer will first give it to the aggregator, who will then take it to the market yard. This is the APMC. From the APMC, it goes to the wholesaler, who is the trader. Then it goes to the sub wholesaler. Then it goes to the distributor, then to the retailer, and then finally to the consumer. And at all steps, we require storage, we require logistics. Right? At all steps, these are required. But in the retail route, everything that is meant to be done, creation of infrastructure, etc., is being done at this one collection center. It is also known by the term, this is a term that was in that document and we should use this, called modern terminal market. So everything is done at this modern terminal market. Okay, so this is the case study of Safal. Safal was started in Bangalore. Now they made a particular terminal market. They could handle 1600 metric tons of produce in a day. So what happened was that Safal became linked with some farmer organizations. Now these farmer organizations went to Safal and they got the produce from here. Here they created a modern terminal market where they were doing grading, they were doing cold chain storage, they were doing transport, logistics management. And once all of this is done, they have created modern infrastructure. Then from here, they are going forward into 3 domains. You can either go for then processing, you can go for the domestic market, or we can go for export. So they are managing all the steps of the supply chain are being managed by one particular organization, which is a supermarket. They also have their own retail stores. So they are able to give a better price to the farmers. And since there are lack of intermediaries here, हर step पे कोई ना कोई बंदा नहीं है जो intermediary है, Safal is also able to realize the price better. Okay, so this is the idea of modern terminal market, right? तो जैसे producer या farmer association है, वहाँ से we go to the collection center. Collection center में सारा infrastructure available है और services available हैं, like washing, grading, weight, transport, settlement of payment, advisories given to inputs, quality management, etc. Then here they are going to do storage, and they have further options of direct selling to the processor, to the exporter, or to the wholesaler. So जो entire supply chain है उसकी management ये कर रहे हैं. Similar case study is in the case of Maha grapes. Now Maha grapes is actually grapes that are being sold from Maharashtra. Here what the grape farmers of Maharashtra did, the grape farmers of Maharashtra created a particular cooperative. In this cooperative that they created, they decided to have all of their inputs. They decided to manage them together. For example, they decided that we will do the production together, and if we need something better, for example, when they need fertilizers and they have to import it from Australia, they are going to do it as a cooperative. So large farmers, medium farmers, and small farmers, all of them came together and created this cooperative where they did input management. After input management, they created 3 types of grapes. One is Sharad seedless, one is Thompson seedless, and one is Sonaka. These names are not important. The concept is important. They themselves, these cooperatives that are formed, they themselves do the entire supply chain management. So they don't stop at production only. After this, they also do transport and logistic management, and they also do marketing. And they have created various different brands for marketing in different places. For example, Sonaka is marketed to the Gulf, and Sharad seedless is marketed for domestic, and Thompson seedless is marketed to Europe. Right? So they have created these various supply chains, and they manage the entire supply chain. So market intelligence is shared till the end. So they know what sort of pesticide fertilizers to add. Right? Again, This is the idea of supply chain management. Now we have to understand the food processing industry in India. Now, if we have to study the food processing industry, first let's look at certain previous year questions that have been asked on food processing. Okay, so there have been 4 questions. Let's say this was the first question in 2022. Scope and significance of food processing industry, directly from the syllabus. Challenges and opportunities of food processing sector. Again, if you look at it, the opportunities are same as the scope, right? How income of the farmers can be substantially increased by encouraging food processing. This is the same as significance. So they have asked the same question again. Policy taken by the government of India to meet the challenges of food processing sector. So again, challenges of food processing sector 1. And now what policy did the government take? Again, challenges have been asked and government policy has been asked. Then supermarkets and supply chain management we have seen. Reasons for poor acceptance of cost-effective small processing units. So why are there poor acceptance? Because there are going to be certain challenges in terms of small processing units. That's why people are unwilling to accept it. Now, how will it be helpful in uplifting the socio-economic status of farmers? This is again substantially increasing the income. The thing that was asked here, which is basically the same as significance. So if you look at it, the questions are pretty similar and the points are also pretty similar in terms of they've asked about scope, they've asked about significance, the impact on farmer income as far as food processing is concerned. So firstly, when we have to read about the food processing industry, we have understood that scope is something that is asked multiple times. So scope के लिए it is always better to have data sets, right? And to provide certain data. तो वो एक बार हम देख लेते हैं. Firstly, there is the annual survey of industries of 2019-20 and जो वो कह रहा है कि manufacturing sector में जो registered employees हैं उनमें से 12.2% are in the food processing sector. Then in this year's economic survey, it says that India is first in the production of milk, second in the production of sugar, fruits and vegetables, third in the production of cereals. When we have such high production, there is a scope for us to do value addition. Because of this high scope of value addition, there is a lot of scope for food processing industries to develop in India. So, however, they have said that value addition continues to be low, right? And what are the food processing levels? In food processing levels in India, fruits are processed at only 4.5% of the fruits are being processed, vegetables 2.7, milk 21.1, meat 34.2. So the levels are fairly low. Then as far as the scope is concerned, again in the scope you need to write about these things. So how many exports are coming from food processing? So if you look at the agri-food exports, it is about 46 billion and the share of processed food exports has now become 23.4%. So 23.4% of our food exports are processed food exports. So there is a lot of scope. Then it is estimated to reach 535 billion, the size of the market. It has a CAGR of 15.2% and by 2025 this market will be $500 billion market, right? It is one of the largest employers of the organized sector in manufacturing. वो भी हमने देख लिया. So in terms of, if we look at the scope, there is scope in terms of the value it can add. There is scope in terms of the total market. There is scope in terms of the employees it can generate. And there is scope because if before food processing, or rather upstream of food processing, there is production, right? And we are one of the leaders of agricultural production. So because upstream production is high, there is a lot of scope. So if we get a question on scope on food processing, we have to quote this data, right? Now, there are few stages in food processing. So primary stage is that you consume it in the original state and without significant processing or value addition. For example, just cutting, cleaning, this is primary stage. Then secondary stage is just basic processing, right? So dried fish, chili powder, wheat flour. For example, if we have wheat, usko piece ke, right? So we process the wheat and we make it into flour. This is secondary processing. This is also basic processing. What we're looking for here is tertiary processing. Tertiary processing is important because it basically means transforming the produce, agricultural produce, into something that is ultimately marketable. Okay, so if we see again, like I give you the example, from apple we will create jam, from potato we will create chips. Now if we look at the location of food processing industries in India, These are the areas in which it is located. Now the location of any industry, right? If again this is geography, and this has been asked, by the way, in GS1. The location of food processing industries has been asked in GS1 before. So if there is any industry, right, there the location factors are determined by the industrial location theory, which talks about least cost model. Now this is something we read in geography. I'm just going to tell you the factors that are responsible for the location of any industry, and those same factors can be written here, right? So the first factor for the production of any industry is raw material. So raw material must be available. So in these parts of the country, raw material is available. Then the next factor is the factor of power. So obviously, if raw material is there, we need certain power to operate the machines. Along with that, we also need labor, right? Now, if you ultimately lead to food processing, after raw material, power and labor is used and processing is done, you need transport and you need a market. So market and particular transport facilities are needed. Now, where you set up your industry also depends on the water availability and geographical factors there, and even the climate that is present in those particular regions. So I'll say geography and water. Then these are all geographical factors. There are other factors like government policy and support. So wherever the government will be supporting a particular industry, it will be located there. Then the idea of capital. Capital means money, investment should be there for investment. Then there are sometimes historical factors. For example, if the Green Revolution happened in Punjab and Haryana, these are areas that are going to historically have high production. So it is likely that food processing industries are located here. Then again, there is a factor of agglomeration economy. Agglomeration economy means that, let's say, the Suzuki plant where cars are made was made in Gurgaon, right? So Suzuki also requires rubber. They also require steel industry around them. So these industries is likely to be located close to Suzuki. So if, let's say, there is high farm production and there are decent agricultural markets, there is a scope for export, it is likely that a food processing industry will be set up there. And the last factor, not so much applicable in this case, but in case you get a question on any industrial location, you can use these factors. It is industrial inertia. Industrial inertia means that industries generally do not shift from where they have been traditionally. So how do we remember these factors now? There is a mnemonic to remember these factors, which is real people love making terrifically good coffee. Real people love making terrifically good coffee, but our government likes chai. Now, please don't read too much into this mnemonic. It is only for you to remember. So for the location of any industry, even in GS1, if this topic is asked, real people love making terrifically good, this is geography, not water, good coffee, but the government likes chai. So we can remember this entire factors of industrial location of any industry using this. Now, in food processing, there were two other things that have been asked to us. Mainly the two things that are asked are significance and challenges. So first, let's talk about the significance of the food processing industry. We have seen the scope. What is the scope for its growth? What are the opportunities present? Because India is one of the largest producers, it can help in terms of our manufacturing. It is also something that helps in terms of our agricultural exports, and the market is likely to grow big. But what is the significance of the industry right now? Now, when we have to write about the significance, just think about the sustainable development goals. Is there any sustainable development goal which this industry cannot fulfill? So let's start with sustainable development goals. Let's go that way. So this SDG 1, which is no poverty. So of course, since it is providing employment opportunities, it is leading to better rural incomes. It is a significant industry in terms of alleviation of poverty. Then there is 2, which is no hunger. So if there is a food processing industry, wastage is going to be low. There is going to be value addition to particular produce. Sometimes even micronutrients can be added. So even it can address the idea of hidden hunger. So fortification is also something that can be done here. So it addresses SDG 2 also. Then SDG 3 is good health and well-being. So in terms of SDG 3, it will influence public health. How? Because we are going to get better processed food. We are going to get healthy produce. It is going to have nutritious food and it's going to lead to a better diet. Then let's look at SDG 5. Maybe not so much in terms of SDG 4, but SDG 5. SDG 5 is with regards to gender equality. So about 30% of the total workforce in this sector is actually women. So again, there is a lot of scope and the significance of this industry in terms of the Sustainable Development Goal 5. Then SDG 6 is clean water and sanitation. If we are having a good food processing sector, with this sector, we can focus on saving water, adopting better water practices, right, and reduce the water footprint of the industry. Then SDG 8 talks about decent work and economic growth. So this industry is providing employment to about 1.8 million people. And since it is a manufacturing sector job, it is more remunerative as far as agriculture is concerned because value addition is being done. So it provides decent work and economic growth. Then we talk of SDG 9, which is industry, innovation and infrastructure. Now for the manufacturing industry, there is a lot of scope of innovation here because processed foods are now in high demand. Why are they now in high demand? Because we have a change in our lifestyles. There are double income, no kids couples who want processed food. So there is a demand in terms of the innovation. Rather, the innovation can fulfill that demand and infrastructure can be developed here. Now let's talk of SDG 10. SDG 10 is reduced inequalities. So if we are going to have good food processing industries, it is going to reduce the rural-urban divide in the country. Then, if the rural-urban divide is going to be reduced, agricultural migration or migration that is happening due to agricultural distress is going to be stopped. So once agricultural migration due to distress is going to be stopped, it is going to lead to sustainable cities. So that is SDG 11. Now, SDG 12 is responsible consumption and production. So if we are going to do food processing, it is going to lead to reduction of waste. It is going to lead to better production practices. So even SDG 12 can be fulfilled. So अगर आपको SDGs याद हैं, you can easily write the significance of the food processing industry. Now what have the economic survey said this year with regards to food processing industry? They have said that it plays a vital role in avoiding wastage, in improving the shelf life. Now if the shelf life of a produce is increased using food processing, it directly has an impact on better export potential because exports take time. Shelf life means that let's say I have a particular tomato and it goes bad in 2 weeks, but I have processed this into tomato sauce and this can last for 1 year. This can be exported because it will take time to export it. The sauce will not go bad, but tomato cannot be exported. Then it ensures value addition. It also incentivizes people to diversify agriculture. Why? Because rice and wheat system is something that is dominating in the country, but when you have opportunities of food processing, people are going to diversify, and then even commercialization of agriculture can happen. So these are various other significance factors that the economic survey has mentioned. Now, the other thing that we need to know about food processing industry is the challenges. So again, if challenges are asked, since we have read supply chain management, think about the upstream challenges and the downstream challenges. So if this is a food processor, what are the upstream challenges? The upstream challenges will be in terms of production, will be in terms of APMCs and getting it here. So the problem of storage, of transport, of logistics. Downstream also, there is going to be a problem of logistics and transport, and downstream there is going to be a problem of ultimate marketing to the consumer. So now when we have these few subheadings, now we can find the areas in which these challenges can be written. So if we look at the challenges can be, firstly, if we look at upstream, So there are issues with regards to the raw material that is supplied, the quality of production, then agricultural practices. For example, there is fragmented land holding. The farming techniques are inefficient. Then from here, we have to talk about the seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, the sort of inputs that are being used. Then there is a problem with regards to agricultural credit, right? Then there are lack of regulations here. So these are certain challenges that we see upstream. Now from the farm, once the farm has done this production, from there are going to be challenges with regards to infrastructure and logistics. So again, if we remember the supply chain, it is easy to write the challenges in this particular topic, right? Then there are certain sector specific challenges, right? Again, they are upstream challenges only, but they are sector specific. For example, the impact of climate change, the lack of research and development. If you look at cattle and poultry, there are impacts with regards to the diseases that are being spread. So if diseases are spread in cattle and poultry, it will impact the food processing sector. Sometimes there are not enough veterinary doctors. There is shortage of green fodder. Then here also in terms of cooperatives, whatever challenges we have seen in terms of cooperatives, because cooperatives also are meant to give this produce to the food processing sector, those cooperative challenges can also be written. Okay, now let us understand the downstream challenges. That okay, we have processed the produce, now we have to market it and get it to the consumer. What is the problem? So again, you will need storage, again you will need infrastructure, again you will need logistics. This challenge is there. Then market access is needed. Market access in terms of distribution channels, in terms of linkages to the market, whatever challenges we were reading in supply chain management. So things like lack of demand linked production. Then in downstream, there is also the lack of use of technology and innovation in this particular sector. All right. Then whatever consumer preferences are there in terms of quality and safety, they are not being met. And the investment that is being done in this sector, that is low. So there are upstream challenges and there are downstream challenges in terms of the food processing industry. Again, if you remember the supply chain management, this is something that you can write. Now, what is the way ahead? What is the way forward as far as the food processing sector is concerned? So firstly, we need a policy in this sector where private participation is encouraged. There are incentives, partnership models, etc. Then we need better regulation of this sector so that issues of quality and safety can be addressed. Then there needs to be operational synergy. Operational synergy, this is also something that has been written in this year's economic survey. So things like mega food park, idea of one district, one product, labor management, logistics management. So these operations need to be having synergy. Then the idea of capacity building. So capacity building can happen in this sector if we encourage, let's say, women self-help groups. If we encourage things like NABARD, the Central Warehousing Corporation, etc. Now, in the economic survey this year, it also says that the local food processing units can supply the Anganwadis. They can supply midday meal programs. And this will lead to an agglomeration economy. Once the agglomeration economy develops, they can also supply to urban consumers. The urban consumers also need to change their mentality and they have to go in sync with vocal for local movement. Right? And we can have a national portal where all the ideas or all the food processed products can be listed down. So this has been called by the economic survey captive demand. Captive demand means demand that is there of the sector, close to the sector or own demand of the sector or the country with regard to food processing, in terms of Anganwadis, in terms of midday meals, urban consumers, and the vocal for local movement. So these keywords need to come. Then we need to have better economic management of this sector. So economic management will include the idea of research and development, packaging, equipment, and like we saw in supply chain management, all the stakeholders in the entire supply chain need to be engaged, and ultimately a stimulus package can also be given by the government to this sector. So if you look at this way forward, we can remember it as process. There are two C's here. This captive demand point, do definitely write this. Now if I go to our notes, we were reading about the significance. Again, it is given SDG wise. Then we talk about what requirements are there upstream and downstream. What are the upstream constraints, the downstream constraints, the way forward for this sector, what the economic survey has said. Please do add these points when you are writing the answer, and the initiatives that the government has taken for the food processing industry. So if you look at the initiatives, there is first the draft National Food Processing Policy of 2019, which talks about cluster approach, in expansion of capacity, strengthening the institutions here, creating awareness, etc. Then important things are PM Kisan Sampada Yojana. I'm sure you've read this for the prelims. It talks about mega food parks, integrated cold chain, value addition infrastructure, etc. Then there is the Pradhan Mantri Formalization of Micro Food Processing Enterprises. So this scheme is ultimately to formalize micro food processing units. So small food processing units have been asked before. So this is something you need to write here. Then there is Kisan Sampada Yojana. Kisan Sampada Yojana is again for food processing, for backward and forward linkages, and creating robust supply chain infrastructure. Okay, these are the initiatives that we need to put. Now, one of the best schemes of this government has been the production linked incentive scheme, and they also have this for the food processing industry. Then there is also the Try Food project and the idea of one district, one product. Now, this is a case study of the Shyadri Farmer Producer Company and how they have used food processing based development to increase their incomes. Okay, just read about this and you can write this here. It's not something that is very difficult to understand or explain. But in terms of food processing, again, we now know the scope of this industry in terms of the data, the significance of this industry, the challenges that this industry faces, what the government has done in terms of this industry, and what is the way forward. Now let us come to the next topic, which is integrated farming system. Now, as the name suggests, integrated farming system is something where the entire system of farming gets integrated. So integrated farming system means that there is no waste, and waste is only a misplaced resource. So the entire farming system is integrated. We will take multiple things. For example, we have pigs also, we have pond in which we have ducks, we have horticulture, and we also have plantation trees. Whatever waste is generated here will be used in this process, and whatever waste is being generated by various things on the farm, they are going to be used as inputs for other things, so that waste management can be done properly, right? There have been two questions on integrated farming system: how it is helpful in sustaining agriculture production, and how is it helpful to small and marginal farmers in India. So this is a topic that has come twice, so we need to know about it in detail. So it is basically a sort of production system where livestock, crop production, fish, poultry, plantation crops, everything is benefiting each other, and there is no waste. Waste is only a misplaced resource. Waste from one component will become an input for another part of the system. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a farm where we are doing horticulture. We have pigs there also. We have fishes that are in a particular pond, and we also have planted trees. Now from this horticulture, whatever is left over that is not good quality to be marketed can be a particular fodder for these pigs. Also, if let's say you plant wheat and you get the crop of wheat, there is also chaff. Chaff means that part of wheat that is the light twigs etc. that we have to separate in winnowing. So that chaff that is coming, जो actually market करके we are not going to give to humans, whatever is the leftover from horticulture, that can act as fodder for the pigs. The pigs are going to excrete dung. Okay, now this is technically waste. This waste is not supposed to be thrown away. This is supposed to be used as manure for horticulture, and it is going to be used as feed for the fishes. So fishes can feed on this pig dung. The pond water that we have to recycle, pond का water हम बार बार change करेंगे, that recycled pond water can be used to clean the pig sites and bathe the pigs. And if trees are being planted, they can give shade to horticulture. So the entire system is integrated. There is no concept of waste. Waste from one place will become input to other place. This is one of the models of integrated farming system. Now, what can be the particular advantages of the system? A, of course, it will encourage diversification. It will encourage resource optimization. It will encourage nutrient cycling. Then we have already read about integrated pest management. So that is also a component of integrated farming systems. It will increase farm productivity and income, and it will make agriculture more sustainable. But what are the challenges? Firstly, if we look at small farmers, they are not aware of something called integrated farming system. Even if they are aware, they cannot afford all of this, because having horticulture crops, having things like pigs is not something which is cheap. Even if they are aware and they can afford, they do not have acceptance of this system. They do not accept that this is actually going to benefit them. Awareness is there, affordability is there, but they do not accept these new systems because they are used to the traditional ways of farming. And even if they accept it, at some times it is not remunerative. Remunerative means it does not generate enough profits for them. Why? Because at some places it is not linked to the food processing industries, and there is no guarantee of minimum support price for all components of integrated farming system. Now, why have I shown you like this? These are the way you are supposed to make your notes. Although ये सब कुछ आपके नोट्स में जो आपको दिया है उसमें लिखा है, बट आपको जो अपने खुद के नोट्स बनाने हैं वो इतने ही बनाने हैं. अगर आपको कॉन्सेप्ट समझ आ गया है, from these keywords you will be able to write the answer. Of course, everything is given in the notes. If you see here, the models are also given. This is the model I was explaining. There is also a horticulture duck fishery model. Then what are the advantages, what are the challenges, and the way ahead. But again, they are things that you need to write in this format in your notes, ताकि हम बस ये देख के सब कुछ याद कर सकें. Now, next thing we have to read are what are the initiatives that the government has taken with regards to integrated farming systems. So there is a National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, the Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, and Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. So if you get a question on integrated farming system, it's usually going to be about this only, that what is it? So here you can explain it through a model. What are its advantages, its challenges, and how government is promoting this idea of integrated farming system. Now the next thing we have to read about is agricultural exports. So agricultural exports again are something that we think about in terms of marketing. Sorry about that. So agricultural exports is something where we think about marketing. So we read about this, that there is inputs. From inputs you go to supply chain management. From supply chain management, there are three possibilities. We have read about APMCs, we have read about food processing industry, and now we are going to read about agricultural export. Okay, so what are, in terms of agricultural exports, what are the challenges that India faces? What is the scope that we have? And how can we improve our agricultural exports? This is the idea. So in agricultural exports, firstly, let's look at some data. As per PIB, it says that in this fiscal period, India's agricultural exports is now 53 billion, with APIDA contributing about 51% of India's agri exports. And in this year's economic survey, it says that we export more than 7% of our food grains. Now, of course, agricultural exports are something that are going to boost farmer income, right? But there are certain challenges in our way of agricultural exports. So if I have to think about challenges for agricultural exports, I will think on two terms. One is the supply side factors. India is the supplier, India has to supply to various countries. So what are the challenges that are there in India? Then India's supply to various countries is then the next step is the demand in various countries. So what are the challenges that exist at this demand level? That these countries have some demand challenges related to the exports that we are doing. If we think about it in this manner, we'll be able to generate the points. So firstly, let's think about the supply side challenges. So firstly, we are stuck at the low end of the value chain. So we are exporting again apples but not jams. Now, whatever challenges we have read in terms of input with regards to, let's say, land fragmentation, not using high yielding variety of seeds, excess use of chemical fertilizers, lack of agricultural investment, lack of agricultural mechanization, these are all points that make our supply of agricultural produce not good enough. So there can be input challenges. Then we have read about supply chain management. So the lack of post-harvest infrastructure, lack of cold chain and warehousing, lack of logistics, lack of food processing, this is also a challenge. And thirdly, the challenges with regards to our policy. Policy is that we put minimum export price and export bans. There is a challenge with regards to custom clearance. Now, the policy in India is that export will be done as a last resort. So firstly, whatever supply of agricultural produce we'll have, it will be ensured that India's food demand is met. And only when India's demand is met, we are then going to go for exports. But what is the problem here? If let's say in some year our production is low, then what we do is we only focus on domestic demand and we put export bans or minimum export prices that stop our export. But if you look at it from a country like UAE's perspective that is dependent on India for food exports, when there is low production, India suddenly decides not to export. So our image as a reliable food security partner gets dented. So the idea of exports as a last resort is also a challenge in promoting export competitiveness of India. And when you are writing anything about export challenges, don't write challenges in export, write poor export competitiveness. Okay. Now let's look at it. Look at the demand side of it. So if we look at the demand side of it, the countries that are there who are taking India's agricultural produce, what are issues there? So firstly, there is global macroeconomic instability. Right, there is the Russia-Ukraine war. So this becomes a challenge. Then there are barriers to trade. So there are tariff barriers and there are non-tariff barriers. Here we know about sanitary and phytosanitary measures. In tariff barriers, there are things like the tariffs that they have placed for various products that are coming. For example, EU has placed tariff on products coming from India. Okay. Then there are trade agreements. So our trade agreements are not negotiated in the most favorable way, such as our free trade agreements or our regional trade agreements. So it might affect farmer income and these trade agreements need to be done better. Then post the pandemic, various countries are looking at food security. Right? They have seen that in the pandemic, it is not okay to be dependent on a single country. So they think that food security is something they need to ensure by themselves. So the demand for agricultural exports is declining. And lastly, if you look at consumer demand and market intelligence, we do not have consumer demand based production, the similar challenge that we were reading in supply chain management. Here what is happening is the demand is for healthy produce. The demand is for wellness. The demand is for horticulture, but we are producing rice and wheat. So there are challenges on both sides. Then there are some other challenges. So we read about India being a net water exporter. This is of course a challenge. Then there are challenges with regards to India not having diversification. So there are certain countries we export to, but we are unable to enter, for example, the African markets. We are unable to enter the European markets. And even in terms of produce, our agricultural export is fixed with regards to cereals and not in terms of horticulture. So these are the challenges that India faces. Again, अगर आपको अपने notes बनाने, they should be done in such a logical way so that when you are writing the answers, it's not a problem, right? So here the supply and demand side problems are given. You can make this diagram as it is in your mains answer, right? Then these are the challenges that I've already told you about. Then what government initiatives have been taken? So India has certain digital initiatives like the Safe Food Export Traceability Portal, One Lab, One Assessment, and Monitoring Exports Alerts Portal. Now these are portals that ensure that the quality and safety of the produce that we are exporting is efficient. Then there is APIDA. There is the National Program for Organic Production, the Agri Udan program, the Kisan Sampada scheme, and other initiatives like the formation of tea board, rubber board, spices board. These are institutional mechanisms for the coffee board, for example, institutional mechanisms for the export of particular produce. Now, what is the way forward as far as agricultural produce is concerned? Okay, so the government had actually formed a high level export group, right? A high level expert group was formed, considering with various ministers in it, to talk about agricultural exports. So the recommendations of this high level expert group need to be followed. Then we need high value agricultural commodities. So rather than being stuck at the low end of the value chain, we have to talk about high value agricultural commodities such as basmati rice, marine produce, etc. Then our renegotiation is needed of our regional trade agreements and our bilateral trade agreements. The same challenge that we had seen, this renegotiation is needed. Then we were seeing that there is lack of market intelligence. So this information asymmetry with regards to what the consumer needs and what the producer is producing, this information asymmetry needs to be sorted out. Then the various schemes that we have found, there needs to be convergence of these various schemes, right? We need to link the exporters, processors, and producers. So basically the idea of supply chain management, that linkages need to be there through the entire focus. Now there was a challenge of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So we need better testing infrastructure. Okay. Now the other thing is that the issues of farm subsidies, the issues of this export policy, this need to be revisited, because our import duties, our export bans, our farm subsidies are something that again bring issues with regards to our production and exports. Then we need to develop efficient value chains. So efficient value chains need to be developed globally and domestically. And from access exports, which are exports as last resort, we need to go to targeted exports, that we have targeted that this is the country and this is the produce that we're going to target. For example, the country is UAE and the produce is flour. So this is what we're going to export to. Access exports means that export as a last resort only after our own domestic demand has been met. And we have to focus on food processing industry because it will lead to greater value addition. This is the idea. Okay. So this can be remembered. This is again a mnemonic based way forward. So you can remember this as horticulture. So HO stands for this, or RT is for regional trade agreements and renegotiation. Then I for information asymmetry, CU for convergence of schemes, then linkages across the sector. Then you have testing infrastructure, then revisiting our idea of farm subsidies and market denials, efficient value chains. Paradigm shift is needed from access exports to targeted exports, and we need to focus on food processing industry. So you can remember this as horticulture pay focus. Okay, just for you to remember. Now the high level expert group that was formed, this is the way forward for agricultural exports. The high level expert group that was formed, that says that we need to focus on 22 specific crop value chains and 7 crop value chains, that are rice, shrimp, spices, buffaloes, fruits, vegetables, and vegetable oil and wood. These are must-win lighthouse sectors, and we have to create value chain clusters for value chain development of various crops. So across the chain, so basically it is again talking of supply chain management, that across the chain value needs to be added. The export plan that India will make will be state-led, because there are various states that know about their potential and the products they can export. They can again link this to one district, one product. Private sector needs to participate to drive demand and emphasize value addition, and the role of the central government is to act as enabler. So creating of crop value chains with the role of state government, with the role of private sector, and with the role of central government. This was the recommendations that the high level expert group gave as far as increasing agricultural exports in India was concerned. Now The last topic that we have to read after this is the idea of taxing agricultural income. So should we tax agricultural income? This is the question. Now, what is the current status? The current status is that as per section 10, subclause 1 of the Income Tax Act, agricultural income is not taxed. If you look at it, there is also a section 2 of the Income Tax Act that defines agricultural income. It is the income that comes from rent from the land used in agriculture, income that comes from agricultural operations, and income coming from farmhouses, but only under certain conditions. If you're using it for a party, then it will not be agricultural income, right? In this idea of taxing agricultural income, it has been explored by various committees, and the latest one was the Kelkar Task Force that explored it in 2002. If we get a question on taxing agricultural income, it's only going to ask the arguments in favor and the arguments against. So should we tax agricultural income? This is the question. Currently, it is not taxed. So whatever income you get from agriculture, there is zero tax on it, and you don't even have to file a income tax return, right? So now I would ask that you take a couple of seconds and think about whether taxing agricultural income is a good idea or not. So of course there can be arguments on both sides whether we have to tax agricultural income or not. There can be arguments that can be given on both sides. So yes, there is a need to tax agricultural income, and no, we should not be taxing agricultural income. These are the two ideas. So what are the arguments that can be used? So firstly, if we look at why we should tax agricultural income, the first argument is that there is tax evasion happening. So people are actually diverting their income, showing it as agricultural income and not showing tax on it. So it is being used to hide black money. For example, if I show that I am a farmer, I have, let's say, 1 acre of agricultural land. My income as a doctor is 50,000 rupees a month. But I show that my income as a doctor is only 30,000 rupees a month, and the rest of the income is actually agricultural income. So I'm not paying tax on it. So it leads to tax evasion. Then, if we place a tax on agricultural income, right? Anyway, most of the farmers who are small and marginal are below the threshold for taxation. So since they are below the threshold of taxation, they are not going to face the burden of taxation. Then if taxation is something that is enforced, so let's say we have decided that yes, we are going to tax agricultural income. To tax agricultural income, you will have to have land records. The main problem of India not having digitized land records, and India not having enough land records to there's not enough digitization, and there's always been a challenge with land records. This is mainly because there is no tax on agricultural income. If there was tax on agricultural income, the income tax department would itself go and digitize all the land records because they would have to claim tax from it. So to tax, you will have to have good land records. So it will give an impetus to the government to make proper land records. Then if you have proper tax records and you are paying tax and you are filing your income tax return, you get access to finance and credit. Okay. Then once you are getting access to finance and credit, this can also help you enhance your revenue, right? And enhancing your revenue and getting more input based management. So you get more credit, you can have better inputs, and it will lead to greater productivity. And lastly, the tax revenue of the government will definitely increase because only the big farmers are going to be taxed, and the tax revenue is going to increase, and this tax evasion is going to stop, right? So this is the idea of yes, we should tax agricultural income. What are the challenges in taxing agricultural income? So firstly, it is a state subject. Okay. As per the constitution, it cannot be done by the center. So there might be opposition from the states. Then there is an administrative burden. You will have to check everyone's income tax return, right? Even if you are falling below, even if you are below the tax threshold, you still have to file the income tax return. And if you have to file the income tax return, the problem is that you will need a particular accountant Okay, your income might be below the tax threshold. Like let's say in the recent budget, the tax threshold for paying tax is 3 lakh rupees. Your income is 2.5 lakh rupees. But still you will have to file the income tax return. And farmers are already in distress. So so for them to get a particular professional to help them file this income tax return will become a problem. And there is already the issue of agrarian distress that exists. Right? Farming is already not a remunerative profession in India, and putting a further tax on it will be a problem. But as far as the Kelkar task force is concerned, the Kelkar task force gave the recommendation that for the big farmers, tax should be there, because a lot of evasion and a lot of black money is being funneled through the agricultural sector. So mainly this problem and the fact that small and marginal farmers are below the threshold anyway. The Kelkar task force gave the idea that big farmers need to be taxed. Now this is it. I think we've covered everything that we had to cover in this lecture. So as we had decided initially, we've read about supply chain management, we've read about food processing, we've read about agricultural exports, integrated farming system, and taxing agricultural income. So in the next class, which is going to be live, we're going to continue with the remaining topics. Thank you.